My name is James Lee, and welcome to Breaking Points Beyond the Headlines. The 2024 Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate seat in West Virginia, set for May 14th, is shaping up to be a dynamic contest, with longtime Senator Joe Manchin deciding not to seek re-election. Manchin's retirement has opened up a competitive field among Democrats in a predominantly Republican state. And joining us today is Zach Shrewsbury, one of those candidates running to replace Manchin. He is a native West Virginian, an ex-Marine, a community organizer. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. To start, I think it would be a good idea just to give the audience a brief intro about you, your background, and why you decided to throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, so native West Virginian. When I graduated high school, I went out to college for a semester. I realized I couldn't afford it, so I joined the military. I joined the Marine Corps. I did 2.5 years in a fleet anti-terrorism security team, and another 2.5 years in the infantry. I got as a sergeant, became a father while I was in the Corps. I got into politics when I moved to Seattle for a little bit. Then eventually I had to come back home to take care of my grandmother in West Virginia. So I moved in next to her. She'd fallen ill. When I got back here, I saw a lot of poverty. I saw an addiction crisis. I saw people hurting, and I wanted to do something about it. So I dived into a lot of community organizing, which is kind of politics in general. You're just mutual aid work, essentially. So I started delivering clean water to communities that didn't have clean water. I started feeding the homeless in southern West Virginia, trying to keep them warm in the wintertime, giving out warming layers, clothing, coats. And that took me across the state, really advocating for different communities for their needs. And it all came down to me. It's the same story, whether you're Republican or Democrat. People here just worried about their wages, their jobs, their roads falling apart, and keeping food on their table. So I kept working that angle. Eventually I picked up by some different organizations. We started pushing for legislation that took me from Charleston to DC. We were pushing for the PRO Act being a big one, Build Back Better. We were pushing for that. Freedom to Vote Act for the People Act, etc. The biggest thing I've been doing here in West Virginia last year was pushing for renewable energy to come to the state. I'm a big solar guy, and that's one of my biggest talking points. I want to bring renewable manufacturing jobs to West Virginia. But I went to 50-some towns in the coal fields here talking about applying for the Inflation Reduction Act to get solar panels on on city halls, police stations, street lights, you name it. So that's a lot of the work I've been doing. I threw my hat in this race because I never saw anyone that represented the working class West Virginia. I always see, I see people who don't have an understanding of what goes on in this whole state. As an organizer, one of the nice things about being a community organizer, I go everywhere. It doesn't matter. I speak, doesn't matter your political affiliation. I'm there talking to you, trying to help you out. And I think that resonates. I think you need someone that's from the hills and hollers like myself that understands the struggle. And we don't have that at the federal level. We have millionaires, we have coal barons, we have we have out of touch rich men who have never experienced it, or if they have, they've forgotten. And so I'm trying to give that experience to the U.S. Senate because I understand where everyone in West Virginia is coming from, and no one else does.
So, yeah, you mentioned a couple pieces of legislation there that you would support. So I'm wondering, what issues are the most important to West Virginians right now? And why do you feel like, you're the candidate to advocate for their concerns in the Senate?
Because I've been, like I said, I've been across the state, the whole state. I've been talking to as many communities as possible, especially in this run. I've just done the same thing. I've been to almost all the counties in the state, talking to different crowds. I've been to union halls. The biggest thing I think we need is we need to go ahead and kick the ball down the road with a justified transition for minors. That's one of my biggest talking points. Is I want the manufacturing jobs to come here. We can build solar panels here. I've talked to manufacturers. I've talked to installers. It's fully possible to do. We just have to actually start doing it. It'll take probably a decade or more to get it done. But once we started doing it, you can then cover those workers, the miners, give them the same wages, free training, get them the first option to those new jobs. And we can make West Virginia an economic hub in renewable energy work. You don't have to buy it from China. You can build it here in West Virginia. Much like how coal used to power, we used to power the nation decades ago. We could do it again in a brand new light with solar. That's been a very popular talking point of mine. The other one is trying to tackle the addiction crisis through federal funding for here. We need a lot of federal funds coming to recovery centers here to encourage recovery, and probably a massive public awareness campaign for Narcan or harm reduction, because there's a lot of stigma around that. And I'm trying to, a lot of my organizing has been trying to break that stigma with other organizers on the ground for years now. and just trying to keep people alive. We as a nation love to throw people in jail and expect that to solve problems. No, you're just throwing people in jail, give them a record, they get out of jail, and suppose like West Virginia where there are no jobs to choose from. So what do you expect people to do? They're just going to get. It's just a cycle. So I'm trying to tackle that. We also need. I mean, we can go on all day. I mean, we need massive infrastructure investments in West Virginia. Our bridges are crumbling, our roads are crumbling. If you go anywhere outside of Charleston, even Charleston's hard. You go anywhere outside of that, it's across the state. We need infrastructure badly. Um, what
Yeah,
else? What else do you want to talk
you're
about? I
talking a
mean,
lot about these pieces of domestic legislation, right? But I don't know
mhm,
if you've seen in Congress, there's not a whole lot of that going on. Very much gridlock when it comes to domestic legislation, and totally bipartisan when it comes to giving out money or funding foreign wars.
mhm.
So I'm wondering, yeah, as an ex-Marine, thank you for your service, by the way. What are your thoughts on the military-industrial complex and its influence on legislation in Congress?
Oh, I think yeah, the military industrial complexes. Your private military companies are tied to a lot of the wasteful spending we do. I think a lot of the social programs I advocate for would come from reallocating funds from the Department of Defense. The DoD loves to waste money on projects, or we'll swipe a card without even asking where the money's going. It very much it really comes down to your Halliburtons, your BAE systems. I'm trying to name them off the top of my head that are poaching the military for everything they are, poaching the federal government. But yeah, the military industrial complex fuels America very much so, and I'm very much against the industrial complex that it is.
And it seems to be bipartisan. I know you're running as a Democrat, so I'm curious. Um, what do you think the party stands for? What do you think the Democratic Party stands for in 2024? Because I think at the national level, the only messaging that I've heard consistently is that it is the not Trump party. So what does running as a Democrat mean to you?
I mean, you really have to get down to. I think that the National Party itself has lost its messaging very badly. Democrats have always been bad at messaging. Let's just be honest. For me, I'm trying to get it back to the roots of working class people sticking up for unions, and just really just what it used to be. Trying to fight for the common man. What my grandmother still believed the party used to be. Nowadays, I absolutely agree. Nowadays, you don't know what the message is because the Democrats fail hard on their messaging, and it's across the board, especially in rural America. And we can talk about that too, man. The messaging in rural America is horrible.
I want to spend a couple minutes on foreign policy because that's kind of a top of mind right now, since, especially Ukraine and Israel, we just spent them close to $100 billion in aid. So what do you think the US should do in regards to each of those conflicts? Let's maybe start with Ukraine, Russia.
Sure, Ukraine and Russia is such a complex one. I'm very much a pro peace candidate. I think we should pursue peace talks the best we can. I'm not sure because I mean I know the Democrat Party loves to say we have to keep fighting against Russia, but well, who is though? Ukraine's running out of manpower. I mean, they're at this point with an ongoing conflict. It's hard to nail down an actual solution. I've always said anyone that gives you a black and white solution on this does not know what they're talking about because you're dealing with a massive superpower that's not doesn't is not exhausted on their manpower yet. Russia's going to keep pushing. They hold Crimea, and I don't see without NATO involvement, I don't see those regions ever going back to Ukraine. And I'm very much not trying to have NATO involved in that war, boots on the ground. And people need to understand that if that does happen, it'll be American troops on the ground. And that's going to be your sons and daughters and grandkids fighting that war. And I don't think people really realize that. Now, what's the solution? You need peace talks for one, and what that looks like. Either you need to set up a demilitarized zone. You can fortify Kiev if you want, but I mean at this point, because now with the ongoing conflict, I don't know, but I don't know what that would look like. It would depend on the talks. We have to get peace talks started first, instead of holding on to this hope and dream that Ukraine's going to hold on forever. They're not. Without NATO involvement, they're not. And I do fear for that. I don't want to see um, more people being sent to Ukraine to
Yeah.
fight that war.
And what about Israel, Gaza? So I'm curious, do you think what's going on there is a genocide? Because that seems to be a
Yes,
hotly debated topic. So what are your thoughts there?
yeah, absolutely. What's happening there is a genocide, if you ask me. Israel's got the Palestinian people backed into a corner, and they keep bombing. And it's ridiculous. at this point. So for me, we need to sit down our ally and tell either cease aid to them to where they pull back what's happening, because at this point you're bombarding civilians for across the board. I mean, there's so much documented footage of food trucks getting bombed, people just getting shot for no reason. So it's a horrible scenario in Israel, Gaza. So for me, the United States, go ahead and sit Israel down and cease aid to Israel, cease weapons, cease money until Israel back forward. Because I mean, we're just watching people be eliminated slowly, and we can't have that. So yeah. So I mean, as I said, I'm very much a pro ceasefire and that, and we need, like, once again, pursue talks that stop the mindless violence.
Yeah, yeah. And given your military background, I wanted to ask you this question regarding, I don't know how much you know about this, but the USS Liberty, the U.S. naval vessel that was attacked by Israel in 1967, killing 34 American servicemen and wounding another 171. Israel had said at the time right away that it was a case of mistaken identity. And officially, the incident remains the only case of an attack on a U.S. ship without a full congressional inquiry. And veterans, survivors of the attack, they've been calling for a full congressional investigation for decades. So is that something that you would support?
Certainly. I mean, yes, I don't know a lot about it. I do know exactly. Basically, everything you just said is what I know. I don't know a lot into it, but absolutely, we should look into it, because I mean, if it's a case of mistaken identity, anything, all that should be looked into. If any time a military vessel is attacked in any sort of way, there has to be an investigation full on. So yeah, of course, that should be supported.
And before we wrap up, I wanted to switch gears a little bit to talk about your campaign strategy. So the primary is going to be in a few days' time, Tuesday, May 14th. You're facing off
Yeah.
against Glenn Elliott. He's the current mayor of Wheeling, West Virginia. And I think he's been endorsed by Joe Manchin. And then there's also an ex-coal executive in the race, Don Blankenship. I believe you've raised the most money of all three of them. So what is your path to victory in the Democratic primary?
What we've been doing this entire time, going to communities and talking to everybody, and really just being my unabashed self. I've been in rooms full of Republicans where I've literally said, I'm not here to pander for your votes. I'm here to tell you exactly who I am and see where I can help you out in your communities. We're not going to agree on everything, and that's fine. But I am the person standing here, and I want to make sure there's food on your table, whether we agree or not. And that resonates. I'm not here to give a dog and pony show, for instance, for voters. So I mean, like, we've been everywhere. I do this every day. Believe me, I'm tired, but we're out and about constantly, just talking to people. I'll go anywhere and meet anybody. That's what we've been doing. And I'll continue that into the general. The compare and contrast between myself and Governor Justice is vast. We're very much the exact opposite people, so to speak. So I've been saying, this is a race between the company store and the working man. You have to choose the working man this time. Where we can't afford to have any more company stores.
And when it comes to the primary, I'm going to jump to the general in a second, but within the primary, what's been the difference in approach or messaging between, let's say, you and Mayor Elliott?
Mayor Elliott seems to follow your more standard Democrat playbook, more of your moderate, maybe diet progressive policies. I don't see a lot of policies coming from him very much, besides safe talking points, so to speak. So, but just you're really much your standard Democrat playbook.
Yeah, and how
So.
is
Don
the
Blankenship,
how is the sort of the normie Democrat responding to your messaging versus his messaging?
from my perspective, I seem to have a lot more positive results. People love my messaging. People like my where I'm coming from. They like the background. They like the story. They like exactly that I'm just I'm hitting every policy I can think of, and I have a policy point to it. People respect that. Exactly where I stand. So I've had a positive reception across the board. Of course, it's going to be it's still going to be mixed. You have your more established Democrats that are going to go with your Manchin endorsed candidate, but even that's so. Like I said, I've had a lot of success in those conversations, in those meetings. Then you talk about Don Blankenship. I don't think Don Blankenship's a factor at all. I'm not sure why he's in this race. I think probably just to maintain his name recognition. But I don't know why he's here. Honestly, I don't think he's going to be much of a factor.
Okay, so then if you do win, what's going to be your campaign strategy? Is there going to be a pivot when it comes to the general to be competitive in a traditionally Republican state?
I plan on going right after justice very aggressively. You have to. You have to really lay it out for West Virginians on who Justice is, what his background is, and where I'm coming from. And and like I said, the people respect when they have someone that comes from the communities like I do. Jim Justice is not. Jim Justice is very much a cold bear and doesn't pay his workers. And I outwork him every day. I outwork everybody. Like I said, I do this stuff every day. I'm on the ground every day. We're not to be stopped. So it just continues forward. Like I said, if it requires, I'm not going to just talk. Since it's not the primary, it opens up to not just talking to Democrats. I now open up to talk to everybody for votes. So that's no problem for me. I'll go to Republican halls and talk to you. Doesn't bother me at all. So
Okay. So where can people find more information about your campaign if they're interested in learning more, perhaps maybe even getting involved? Where do you want people to go?
sure. Yeah, I'm on all social media. You can type in Shrewsbury for Senate on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok there. But you can also just go for shrewsburyforsenate.com, my website, and you can learn all about me there and my issues, and you can volunteer there as well.
Awesome. Well, Zach, appreciate you for joining us today on Breaking Points, and best of luck on the campaign trail.
Hey, I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right. I hope everyone enjoyed that conversation with Zach. If you are interested in more independent coverage, stories you won't hear in the mainstream media or anywhere else, I'd highly encourage you to check out and subscribe to my YouTube channel, 5149 with James Lee. The link will be in the description below. Of course, keep on tuning into Breaking Points, and thank you for your time today.